Hi, welcome to day 3 of vETC at NAB2023. You guys are up for a real treat with this one. People often ask, where do you find some of your knowledge? This is one of those places. Going to Sam, he is such an icon and such a pioneer, and so glad to have you here today, Sam.
Thank you. Just have to figure out how to turn this on. Yeah, I mean, I think you probably naturally become an icon if you live long enough in this business and keep coming back and doing the same thing again and again until you get it right. But yeah, I mean, I thank you all for coming. I really appreciate that. And, I think more or less, virtual production has become like endemic to NAB. I think they may wind up renaming the whole convention after virtual something. But are you guys into virtual production, or what are you kind of interested in? I mean, yeah. And I know that we've got our Defense Department here, so that we can't say anything too secret, or it will wind up at DARPA or someplace like that. But this idea of convergence of technology, I think, is what we're seeing, and like a critical mass of, like, I think it's kind of like when they came across the United States and started building railroads, and they didn't exactly know where they were going to intersect. That if you bought land where all the railroads intersected, you would probably do pretty well, right? Like places like Denver, when some great grandfather went through, he said there were like 20 people in Denver. He said this place will never amount to anything. And yet the railroads converged, and look at it today. So I think what we're seeing is this convergence of technologies. And to me, it's really fascinating, having come out of the film era with optical printing, and this, like watching paint dry. You would do a shot, get an idea. I'm sorry to say that Doug Trumbull's not here this year. He's kind of moved on to another level. But Doug and I started with Star Trek together, and that whole V'ger sequence and everything, where it had to be done real time, live. And I did the engine of the Enterprise, which had to be done live. It was a 60-foot high column of light, and I happened to be blowing glass at UCLA. I was going to become a glass blower, and projecting light through it and getting kinetic light, right? So I showed some of my images to Bob Weiss, and he said, look, we don't want to do this as a post effect. It has to be a real-time event on stage. So we did it, and like, other than the fact that, like, the first time I lit it up on the first shot, it lit on fire, and my control system lit on fire, because I had, like, 250,000 watts of light that I'd never been able to turn on all at once, because I built it out of my house in Venice, right? So I got it all in there, and I turned it on for the first time because it was a little bit late, and Shatner and Nimoy are coming down the elevator for their opening shot of launching the Enterprise, and my 10 amp Variac just basically melted, right? And the thing went out of control, and I'll never forget, they yelled, save the director, right? And they picked up Bob Weiss in his director's chair and ran out of the soundstage. So fortunately, the special effects guys figured it out right away that I had just, like, super underestimated the power. And they came in with a big Variac, and we were back up and shooting. That turned into the the V'ger sequence, which was at that point the largest lighting spectacle Paramount had ever done. But it had to be done in camera. And you know, the reason I'm kind of going back that far is my career started out with real-time on-set, make it work, and it either works or it doesn't in camera. And then we went all the way into the digital realm of everything turning into a green screen, where basically the crew would get a lobotomy going in, you know, and you're on green screen all day long, and nobody knows what's happening. Nobody knows what it's going to look like. How do you light it? You know, how do you light for daylight if you can't see daylight behind me? Where's the sun? Where's the Eiffel Tower? Very messy, because all the actors didn't know which way to look, and you know, somebody's got a laser or a tennis ball and they're running around with it, and it's like, you know, really bad for the actors, and very difficult for a director of photography, and very frustrating for the director, right? Because they're basically trusting the visual effects supervisor, and everybody comes up to you and says, "Is it going to look real?" You know, and you go, "Well, yeah, I think so." You know, I mean, and that was Beauty and the Beast, Pan Am, a whole bunch of shows where after 9/11, overnight all the actors wouldn't get on a plane, and we were doing ER, and John Wells came and said, "What, you know, what do you want to do?" We said, "Well, you know, we'll get on a plane with a bunch of cameras," and it took 2 Panavision film cameras and 30,000 feet of film at $1 a foot to virtualize and capture the riverfront in Chicago, right? So, you know, the guys on the crew were like, "What do you mean you're not going to come back to Chicago?" And he said, no, we're gonna shoot all this, and we're gonna take it back to LA, put it on green screen, and we're gonna put it, because nobody will get on a plane. So we did, and it wound up looking better than what they'd been shooting in Chicago in the winter. And the actors didn't have to be out all night long, and you know, it was green screen, so everybody was, you know, fingers crossed, is it going to look real? You know, and we made it look real, with a lot of CPU-based traditional visual effects, but it was kind of a game changer, because all of a sudden they said, "God, it's a lot cheaper to bring the location to the actors than taking the actors to the location. It's safer, they don't have to be out all night," you know, all this kind of stuff. But, damn it, we're on green screen, and we hate being on green screen. I mean, we had Kiefer Sutherland like walk off the set. He'd walk on and see green and leave, right? Because he hated shooting on green. But we did a lot of 24 in Washington, D.C., because it's very difficult to shoot in Washington, D.C. You've got like, you get a permit from one group, and then you got to get another one, and there's like 8 permits to shoot anywhere. We had a scene with Kiefer inside the Lincoln Memorial, and we all arrive at the Lincoln Memorial, and it's sunrise, and we're all excited about this. The Park Service had not shown up yet. The sun is just about to break the horizon, and they said, "Oh, by the way, you can't go in the Lincoln Memorial." And it's like, well, wait a minute. It's like written like we're at the base of the statue. So I said, "Well, do you mind if I go in and look around?" Right? You know, okay. So I took a camera in and just banged out a bunch of stills and motion stuff, whatever I could grab. The sun comes up, and I got one shot. I think it was, you know, and then we went back to LA, put Kiefer inside, and it worked like a charm, right? So we never really used the permit. By the time the park police showed up, we'd shot everything, right? And that's really what virtual production is really, really good at. Is I don't know how many of you have been on a big crew with, you know, if you have famous actors or somebody, the crowd control is just crazy. You know, there's so many bogeys, million people looking at you. You're so exposed. Got a big camera crane. I mean, you know, big production, it's crowd control. And so you have to control every person as far as you can see, right? Now, what happens if you're invisible and you're shooting in Times Square, or last week we were at Shibuya Station in Tokyo with multiple cameras, little Sony cameras, and you know, we did the same thing with Black Magic cameras in Puerto Rico, where we were on the water for Our Flag Means Death. In that case, do you really want all your actors out on a boat for, you know, 8 weeks or 11 weeks? For Our Flag Means Death, we shot everything again with multiple cameras. And so what we're doing is capturing the real world and making it usable in such a way that it'll play on any one of the volumes in this place and look good. So that's one part of the problem, is capturing the data. You know, are you gonna, with NERFs or whatever, and take a bunch of pictures on your cell phone, and you can probably virtualize anything in here to a certain extent. If it's gonna be eye-watering detail that you wanna see, you should be on green screen, because these things, unless you're, what, over at the ASUS booth, they have a $200,000 104-inch, which is 0.07. And it looks really cool, but I mean, you know, really, I mean, it's that has a use. The real high-res screens, everybody's trying to do like a one-size-fits-all. I have a big volume, it's P2.8, Black Pearl, whatever, you know. Man, it was, I've actually had a producer say, if it was good enough for Mandalorian, it's good enough for us. And it's like, yeah, but you're like close. And anyway, it's about field of view. And if you understand lenses, it's about your field of view. So I look at it, virtual production, like a multiplane animation stand. You have layers of reality. You know, Eric's real, totally real, I think. You know,
I hope so.
Right. Now, behind him, we can have a dimensionalized photoreal subject, but it's going to have to stand up to incredible scrutiny with dimensionality and stuff. You know, we don't necessarily have to go around behind it, because I'm not looking behind you, but at least to the surface of what I'm looking at, which is why NERFs are so interesting, because you can take 5,000 photographs of something. We just digitized a shrine in Tokyo, the Nikko shrine, with 500 million points of LiDAR measurement with 15,000 texture photographs, and that will become a photoreal set. So that's good for right behind Eric. Well, actually, I'd say that you should have a physical real set, then go to a dimensionalized photoreal set. And then you can start flattening things out, right? And nobody's going to look at parallax and, you know, say that those clouds don't look real because they're not shifting, right? You know, most camera moves are right in here, almost everything. And every once in a while you have a big crane down, but that's an establishing shot, so you can predict those. You're gonna have probably one to get into the scene, bang, you get in here, now you're in here, boom, you're in here with all these cameras. These can all be shallow depth, high res, smaller screens, mobile. We do mostly mobile screens. Right now we're doing, this is a P1.5 AOTO, which is great. It's got this is the screen we use exclusively now as we wait for even better screens to come out. But these are a great screen. And you can work this close to it. If this was 2.8, we're dead. It's like what's going on over here. Although that's a mimic light, which I love. And Frieder, I don't know if you all have checked out the mimic light, but it is probably that middle ground between what is a light and what is a screen? And by the way, that's a really big topic of discussion in the unions right now. Is that a light or is it a screen? It has a picture on it, but it's a light. So I'm not going to take sides in that argument, but that's something that we're dealing with both playback and lighting right now, and trying to define. So these are like new. It's a new technology that's right in between. Nobody knows what to do with it, and we've only seen just the surface of how to use this light. We did do the Ferris wheel material that's over in the KinoFlow booth. It's probably worth checking out. But this is a great pixel map lighting thing, really good. So at the end of all this, it's gone full circle, right? What we would try to do in camera with glass paintings, with guys like Albert Whitlock, who I was fortunate enough to work with. He did like the Hindenburg for, Albert Hitchcock. But it was all about glass painting. You could look through the camera and it was magic in the camera, which is almost identical to when you see a tracked frustum and you go, why does it look so weird out here? Then you look through the lens and it's got like spot on. So it's better for actors. The DP can finally light to the scene. I would say that pixel track lighting, and don't ever expect this thing behind us, the LEDs, to light your subject. You're basically gonna have a silhouette, and
Or somebody off-colored completely.
yeah, you have to do even more lighting as a DP in a volume. So that's probably the one thing that everybody says is a surprise. When we go on a set, we have a lot of light, man. And volumetric lighting, if I can change this world from night to day to Paris to Tokyo to a CG set to snow scene, right? You can hit a button and do all those things, and that'll change in less than 1 second.
I love your Yosemite setup at your office there for the while, where they were changing the background,
Yeah.
2.5D kind of manner.
Yeah, so you can like spin the sun around in Unreal and do all this stuff. Well, what about these? You spin the sun over to there, and then it takes you a half an hour for your gaffer and your electrics to move that light over to there. So what's the deal, right? The lighting is about 20 years behind the playback, right? So what we're doing is we're volumetric lighting it. I'm putting a sun there, a sun there, a sun there, a sun there. Suns all over the place and fill light all over the place, right? Like a volume of light. And then you pixel map it, and as this world changes, the sun just goes over to there, right? And what you save, the lighting manufacturers love it because they will sell 10 times more lights, But in terms of labor, you make your day. I mean, we're doing How to Be a Bookie right now, the new Chuck Lorre show at Warner Brothers, and it's a half-hour sitcom. Chuck did 3.5 Men, so a lot of high-power talent in there, a lot of pressure with getting things right and moving quickly. It's a sitcom, so I love the big shows. I love the big features where you're doing 2 pages a day and everybody's drinking coffee and relaxed. And that's wonderful. On How to Be a Bookie, we're shooting 12 pages a day, 3 screens, 3 cameras, and cross-shooting really fast in cars. And it's working great. But it's working because we have volumetric light. We have a boatload of light out there, and it's all pixel addressed. We can shift any screen to any playback. We're using 8 synchronous DaVinci Resolves to address all the screens because we have a projected topper about this big. Sony projection going up so there's no pixel problem. You can lower it right down on the windshield, which is, for any of you who've shot cars, you know, a two-shot through the windshield looks straight up at whatever's overhead. And you got to get that topper really low to cover the convex windshield. The minute you get it low, it's in the same focal plane as your actor. So if you got pixels, you're dead on a topper. So we project the topper, and then we have OLED screens that are all different resolutions, all different contrast ratios. Everything's on wheels. We roll it all around, and you just line it up to the camera. So we can shift these cameras to a reverse and flip the screens. They're all on wheels. They're about 20 feet wide. So weight is something I keep asking all these guys like Aoto to, how much does it weigh? You know, I mean, moving a 2,000 pound screen is much different than moving an 800 pound screen. So weight is something that I'm really working with them on, by the way, to change. The other thing that is a kind of a walk-away tip for any of you directors of photography there, are polarizers are your friend in this world. Polarizers. You know how we're all saying, oh, the reflected light off the screen is so nasty, right? That's a thing that you fight with all the time. Put a Pola on your lights, put a Pola on your camera, and watch what happens, right? The reflections will go away.
So one quick question here is, when would you recommend to use virtual production versus not virtual production? I know you've given me some great advice on this in the past.
Virtual production is fabulous if it's dangerous, difficult to get to. You know, you should weigh, how do we do it in live action? That's going to be the best if you can do it. If you can afford to go to Rome and get some great pasta and have a great time, you know, go to Rome. I mean, you know, it's very inspirational. If you can't, send a small team, capture Rome. We did the Vatican. We got a pretty decent capture of the Vatican courtyard. Bring it back, and now you can control the situation. You know, it's fabulous for cars. There's absolutely zero reason to shoot green screen in a car unless you're gonna like flip it upside down or something, because you can still be invisible with like rigs and actors and stuff on green screen. So if you're gonna do big stunts, or you're gonna have somebody dressed in a green suit come in and push Eric off this seat, well, you know, green is pretty cool for that. But there's a hybrid with, you know, ghost framing, frame interleaving, whatever, that you can be shooting green screen and beauty at the same time, right? And really, I think that's where we're going to see some major advancements here, is when this floor is green and you can tilt that camera down and it's a seamless transition into the green screen with 6 DOF tracking rather than 3. And you got to track the lenses and the distortion and all this. It's much more complicated to do it on green screen, but that hybrid fusion will allow one of these cameras to be well off the screen and still be a composite. Tilt up, see all that stuff. We're about to do a action sequence for a video game, really heavy action with continuous takes running through here, people dying, jumping off stuff, stunts. We're gonna build out a warehouse to be partial virtual and partial green and partial real. Because if you can't do that, you know, seamlessly, you can do it much easier on green screen. But now when you get in here, you want quantity, shallow depth of field, coverage, dialogue. That's where you want to use virtual production. That's where it's really friendly. The longer the lens, the friendlier it gets, right? The wider the lens, the more difficult it gets. So, and the wider the lens, you might want to change your mind and you know, put 2 Ferris wheels out there or something, right? So the ability to change your mind in post, if you have a director who doesn't know what he wants, or you're on a short prep schedule, don't try to do virtual production because you'll get burned, right? Maybe have a few screens, you know, cover what you're comfortable with, but be really aware that you don't have an alpha channel. There is no mat, so you're going to wind up with a big old rotoscoping bill if you change your mind. So it's a matter of prep. It's a matter of the subject matter itself, the quantity of shots, the repeatability. You know, are you prepared? They all go into it. So it's not a panacea. It's a great new tool that does certain things like reflective objects really well, but it does other things horribly, like changing your mind and going, oh my God, you know, we have a continuity problem. You know, all the time, cars, if you don't have sync and you cut to Eric and a red bus is going by and you cut to me and that same red bus is not going by, you just broke continuity. And in green screen, we can adjust that. You have artists that go, oh, you know, make this red bus and that red bus. If you're just shooting wild in virtual, it's not going to look the same, right? The car might be stopped when you get to me, and it was moving when you were on him, because you pick up. You don't do the full scene every time. You shoot the master, and then you drop in and start picking things up. So you have to retain sync, which is really part of the game. But anyway, if you have any doubt, call Eric, or you know, complain to Eric. If it worked, call me, and I'll be glad to take any call.
Well, I'm getting the hook at this particular point, and I could go on for hours with you. Getting the opportunity to sit down many a time and listen to you help us was just been amazing. So I really appreciate it. Thank you so much, Sam.
Pleasure.